All right, what's good, YouTube? This is Boxingwave, and we are back with another fight breakdown. One I'm very excited to do. In a couple weeks, February 1st, David Benavidez is going to be facing against David Morrell, who's going to be defending his regular WBA light heavyweight title. Okay. This fight is going to be PBC Amazon Prime pay-per-view. It's going to be $80 if you're here in the States. Now, it's not a bad fight. It's a very good fight. One I'm very excited to see. It has a solid undercard, and I will be here doing live commentary for this fight. Um, the only problem is really with this fight is the pay-per-view. It's really hard at this time to justify that price because of the quality of fights that we're getting, the schedule that we're getting, and the low amount that we have to pay for pay-per-views in other places. Okay, so the pay-per-view, I'm not sure if they're going to do too well with that, but it is a really good fight. I don't think it should be a pay-per-view fight, but I do think it's a very, very good fight. All right. So yeah, good fight. I can't wait to watch it, man. And like I said, this breakdown, I've been doing some film study. I mean, I've done breakdowns on these two fighters before, but Benavidez, I've been following his career for a very long time on the channel, and I've done countless breakdowns for his fights. And let's talk about it. Now, light heavy, we're slowly getting to the process of who's going to be next up at light heavy, who's going to be the next guy. We know that Beterbiev and Bivol has been champions and the two top dogs at the division for some time now. They are going to have a rematch soon for one of their very close and controversial fights from last year. All right, so they have a rematch coming up, but this regular WBA title will put the winner of this fight in position to possibly fight for Beterbiev's super title. Okay. Both of them have recently moved up to light heavyweight. All right. Both of these guys have been career super middleweights at 168, pretty much their whole career. They both had different paths of getting to this stage, though. Benavidez was a guy that started pros very early in his teenage years, so he has a lot more fights in his pro career. All right. So even though they're roughly around the same age, roughly around the same height, roughly, same size and everything, both of these guys have different paths. I think Benavidez is only 1 year older than Dave Morrell. Dave Morrell only has 11 pro fights, stopping most of his opponents. But Morrell was a stellar amateur. Okay, so he came into the pros a lot later than David Benavidez. And in my opinion, Benavidez has fought a way better. He has a way better professional, resume because he's been fighting for much longer. But he's coming off some of his best wins to date. But they recently both moved up to 175. They both had one fight up there each, and I wanted to start off with talking about that. Benavidez fought against former champion Alexander Volstik, who recently came back from retirement after he lost to Beterbiev in a very close, competitive fight, at least up until he got stopped. He retired, took some time off, came back, had a few fights, and then got thrown in there with David Benavidez at the age of 37. All right, now he lost a decision a decision fight, but Benavidez, in a lot of people's opinion, didn't look that great up at 175. Going back to that fight and rewatching the majority of the fight, I remember watching it live. I remember covering the fight live, and going into the fight, I thought that even though Volstik was the underdog going to fight, I thought there was a chance of him winning that fight because of his size, because of his experience, because of his boxing ability. Like, he's a very, very good boxer, And Benavidez, who wasn't tested at 175 at the time, I know he was younger. I know he's had a good run, but I wasn't really sure. I picked him to win, but I wasn't really sure. And I thought the Volstik, for a possible upset wasn't a bad gambling pick. But in my opinion, going back and rewatching it, yes, David did get a little tired up there. And no, he couldn't stop Bozdik or couldn't drop Bozdik. But I still think he performed at 175 for his first challenge up there. I still think he performed a whole lot better than David Morrell did when he stepped up and for Kalajic. Right. Um, Not only do I think Bozdik was a tougher opponent, but I also think Benavidez just performed overall better. I think the Morrell fight with Kalajic was actually Morrell's worst performance as a pro today. And I've seen just about all of his fights. I think Morrell just did not look like himself, and I have some theories. I'm not the biggest conspiracy theorist, when it comes to boxing and stuff. There's certain things that I might believe based on observation and stuff. But, Morrell just didn't look like the same fighter. He didn't look explosive. He didn't look strong to me. He gassed out pretty early in the fight. He got hit a lot in the fight. And in my opinion, Kalajic, being a boxer puncher, seeing his fights in the past, I don't even think he looked his best. I thought the two of them showed too much respect to each other. No one really pushed the pace in that fight, and it was a snoozer of a fight. I remember it being on the undercard of Bud against Madrimov, and I think that was one of the worst fights on the card. All right, so they both had tests at 175, but I think Benavidez, even gassing a little bit, I still think he performed a whole lot better than Dave Morrell. But previous to Dave Morrell's fight against Kalajic and all of his fights at 168, Morrell has looked like a complete monster all the way up into that fight, stopping nearly everybody. I think I forgot Lennox Allen. Lennox Allen, that's his name. Lennox Allen was his third pro fight that he went 12 rounds with, and he clearly won that fight. But he's been explosive in stopping everybody else he's fought before going to 175, and he did it with ease most of the time. David Morrell's is like, again, he's roughly around David Benavidez' size. He is a southpaw. He is a puncher. He's a good boxer with good fundamentals and IQ. Okay, he can fight being front foot heavy, being the aggressor during combinations, or he can fight on the back foot as well. Um, there's a lot less out there, a lot less footage, a lot less, um, I guess, quality of opponents. What I'll say is for Morrell, for the limited amount of fights he's had so far, I think the quality is good on the sense that with less than 11 fights at 168, I think he jumped right into fighting decent opponents. Did he fight the absolute elite at 168, like the Plants or the Canelos? Or no, he didn't fight those guys. But he fought very good fighters that most fighters in 10 fights would not fight that early, that soon. And that's because he was a very good amateur. I think he became the WBA regular champ like in a few fights in his pro career, which is a little crazy. But at the end of the day, that's what it was. Whereas David Benavidez went through his whole career from a teenager up, learning and gaining his experience as an actual pro, not as an amateur. All right, so they had completely different paths to get here. And going into this fight, David has had his tests. But I think this is the greatest test, and I think this is the most dangerous fight for him to date. Because even though Morrell doesn't have that many pro fights, when you watch him fight and see what he can do or saw what he can do at 168, I think he's the most challenging and most dangerous opponent that Benavidez has had up to this point, at least up to 168. I think it's debatable between him and Bozdik. I think Bozdik on an offensively, I think overall Bozdik is probably still the more, as far as boxing IQ, I would give Bozdik. I think Bozdik is still number one, even more so than Andre Plant and all that. But I think Morrell being young, being explosive, being powerful offensively, I think he brings the most dangers out of everybody that Benavidez has fought up to this point. Okay. And that's what makes this a really good fight going into the fight. I can't wait. So with all that being said, Benavidez, super aggressive. I mean, he's always been a monster, but I think he's been getting better. And you know what? Benavidez, doing breakdowns of him in the past, I've always said that he lacks certain fundamentals. You know what I mean? Like he's not the fundamentally sound fighter that we can look at him, watch his footwork mistakes. We can watch, certain things that he do that are not technically correct, right? And I've broken that down in previous fights. But at the same time, when I see these fights with Andrade, with Caleb Plant, it really didn't matter. It didn't really matter what these guys did well. It didn't really matter when these guys landed some good shots and capitalized off some of the mistakes that Benavidez does. It didn't really matter if he's fighting using his back foot coming forward. It didn't matter if he lunged in and squared up in a position, squared up position every time. It didn't really matter. These things were brought up and it didn't matter. Defensive flaws and everything. It didn't really matter because he was so dominant and so strong and durable, and he just overwhelmed his opponents with just volume. It didn't really matter. No matter what they did that was right, even if they started good, like Andrade, like Plant, like other fighters in the past, it never mattered. Because at the end of the day, if you cannot match Benavidez's cardio, you know what I mean? If you couldn't do it, like, yeah, you might back him up at times, but he's still going to come forward every single time. And he's going to come in the same way. He's going to come straight in all the time. He's going to shoot straight right. And once he gets into that position where he can square up and throws those combinations, those chopping right hands, from the sky, or those uppercuts in between your guard, whatever it is you're doing, when you're trying to tie up, he's pushing you off and he's throwing more combinations on the inside. He's been just too dominant. And even for a fighter like Bozdik, who was extremely durable, even losing to Better BF, anybody that watched that fight and seen that fight know that Bozdik was one of the most durable fighters out there. Losing that fight, getting dropped, but was still able to continue. It's not like he got knocked out. He just was just overwhelmed with the force of Better BF. But if you watch this guy and you even watch his fight with Benavidez, you can see that the man was just so durable. Offensively, he didn't have the firepower to match Benavidez, but he had the durability to deal with him. And Benavidez, even when he slowed down, but he never completely gassed out. He still let his hands go. You know what I mean? And that's what makes him a complete force. Where Dave Morrell, he's fought guys. I think your Borsalelli is the only fighter that he fought that actually had him on the back foot. But I think it wasn't by force. I think Dave Morrell just chose to fight on the back foot because he was very comfortable doing it, and he was still landing big shots. We know that your Borsalelli, who's okay now, but he was in a coma for some time after that fight. He was busted up really bad in that fight, losing in the 12th round, getting stopped in the 12th round. But he took a lot of punishment in the fight. You know what I mean? So Morrell has the firepower. He has the size, but can he match? If he cannot hurt Benavidez, can he continue matching and the firepower? Not be explosive for moments, but can he keep going? Based on the Kalajic fight, I'm not too sure. But like I said, I'm not the hugest conspiracy theorist, but that fight made him look beatable. Maybe this fight is only happening because of the performance he put on that night. It's very possible. It's not like we haven't seen it before. Certain fighters wait for the right time to fight certain opponents. And Morrell looked very vulnerable in that fight because he was gassed, and at certain points of the fight, he was getting outboxed a little bit. Still thought it was a sparring match, but at the end of the day, we saw what we saw, you know? And that guy in that fight doesn't stand a chance against Benavidez, in my opinion. But the guy in all the previous fights has a great chance against Benavidez. And depending on how he looks in this fight, and I think in the first 3 rounds will be the most telling rounds in this fight. What does Morrell need to do in this fight? How do you neutralize someone that's never been neutralized before? How do you do it? Um, well, I don't know. We have to see it. I don't know exactly what needs to be done. I think you need to fight a nearly perfect fight in order to beat David. Because we've seen different styles. We've seen Plant do well outboxing him at some point, in the earlier rounds a little bit. But once he got tired and once it became a dogfight, he wasn't able to match. Excuse me. Sorry about that. He wasn't able to match him in a dogfight, and neither did Andre. Who's a southpaw as well. One of the first southpaws that David had fought in a long time. Andre just didn't have the conditioning, and he just wasn't durable enough to withstand the amount of damage he was taking that fight. So how do you beat this guy? Well, first of all, I think if you're going into the fight thinking that you can fight the entire fight on your back foot, I don't think that's going to work with David. I think the pressure will be too much for the boxer puncher and David Morrell. I think adjustments need to be made in this fight. I think there are going to be points where David Morrell is going to have to try to keep this fight in the center, or, and it's risky, try to keep David on the back foot, force him. It sounds easier said than done, but no one has been able to consistently do that. No one has it up to this point. So that's something that we may need to see in order for someone to beat David. Just countering him from time to time. Like, again, if you can't hurt the guy, how do you keep him from coming forward? You're going to have to press forward against David, because David, at the end of the day, and his style is based on him coming straight in and getting close enough to where he can square off with you, because that's when he wants to let loose and turn into a dogfight by throwing those combinations that I was saying earlier. So you're going to have to force him to fight on his back foot a little bit more than his previous opponents. You're going to have to. Or try to outbox him in the center of the ring, And that would include turning David. David doesn't have the greatest feet. He's very front foot heavy. He's kind of flat footed. So you're going to have to box and use the ring and turn him, Throw those combinations and turn him. But you have to hurt him. You have to get him to respect you. I think Morrell has a better chance of doing that than Andre, because I believe he's more powerful and he's a naturally bigger guy, and he's younger. Andre was older at that point. Plant, good boxer, great defensive fighter, but offensively, never really been that powerful. So he wasn't respected. So I think Morrell, with his size, him being explosive, and him being a puncher as well, he's going to have to do it. But doing it for a round or two is one thing. Maintaining it throughout 12 rounds, if it goes that long, is another. And I personally think you have to start and get going early. Because once Benavidez gets into a good rhythm, I don't think the whole let him burn out and be tired thing works. I think Bozdik tried to do that. I think Bozdik took it easy a lot of those rounds by just trying to box and protect, fighting in that high guard and protecting and not himself and not taking too much damage. I think that's what he tried to do. And it worked somewhat. But you have taken so much punishment from Benavidez. You've taken so many body shots from Benavidez. How can you be an action-packed fighter in the later rounds when you're tired yourself? So I think with Morrell is going to have to be at his best when it comes to conditioning. He has to fight the fight. He has to bring the fight to David. He has to keep David on the back foot at certain times in his fight. And he has to keep the fight in the center of the ring as long as he can. Because David, I believe, can be outboxed. But I don't think he can be outgunned. So that's why I say I think you got to fight the perfect fight. Unless you can actually hurt David, which we haven't seen. Yes, he's been knocked down. He's taken some good shots. But he's very, very durable. And I've seen fighters continuously go to the body, and do the right things, but they just couldn't maintain it because David is just His firepower is too much. And once he get a good rhythm going, it's hard to come back. I haven't seen anyone beat David in the second half of a fight. Never seen it before. Never seen it before. You know what I mean? It's like I say this about Usyk all the time. It's like with Usyk, it doesn't matter if you're having success in the first half of the fight. The real fight doesn't begin until the second half when you're tired. And I feel like with David, no, he doesn't have the super technical boxing IQ, all these guys, but it doesn't matter because the guy is so strong and this guy is such a high volume puncher that he's overwhelming you. It doesn't matter what you bring fundamentally. It doesn't matter if you're a good counter puncher. If you can't hurt him, if you can't match him as far as punch volume, it won't matter. David is going to have to gain his respect very early in the fight. But even if he does, he's going to have to figure out a way to maintain it all the way throughout the 12 rounds. Can he do that? I have no idea. Well, we're going to see that Saturday on February 1st. My opinion, my breakdown, it's like many other breakdowns. I'm going to have to see it to believe it. Morrell looks like he could be the one to do it. Outside of Benavidez and Bivol, I think David beats everybody. But until we see this fight, it's going to let me know what I really think about Morrell. And I would have to see it before picking him to win. I have to go with David Benavidez. Because he's proven. He's much more proven. And Morrell at 168, fantastic. At 175 so far, doesn't look like he's going to be able to do it. It doesn't mean it should be a good fight. Now as far as how is David going to win? I think David, as far as like the bettors, the gamblers out there, I think David could stop Morrell. I think David will stop the Morrell we saw in his last fight. But if Morrell is showing any signs of him being the guy that he was at 168, I say it going decision. Betting, I don't think I'm gonna put money on this fight. I think Benavidez. I like his chances of winning, but I'm not sure how. This might be one of those fights that I might go with a live bet because I want to see how they both look in the first couple rounds. That's the way I look at it as far as betting. But as far as my official prediction, I have David Benavidez winning this. He's going to win the fight, in my opinion. If Morrell wins, I think Morrell, I could look at it like this too. I think Morrell has a good shot. Depending how Morrell looks in these earlier rounds, it could be a situation like Daniel Dubois, Anthony Joshua situation. If Morrell has the power to hurt David, he can get David out of here very quickly. But if he doesn't, and he can't hurt this guy, I say David is going to win. And at some point, he's going to start dominating the fight. He's just too much. So I got David Benavidez winning this fight. And it should be a very good fight. All right. Don't think it's pay-per-view, but it's a very good fight. Very good fight. And it's a fight that needs to happen because I want to see who's next up at 175 after Benavidez and Bivol are all done, or while they're still here. All right. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Please subscribe to the channel, smash the like button, share the video, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace.